Hello folks, the transition has occurred. Welcome to the Caterpillar Club. I'm going to be, over the next 12 weeks, talking to you about an album I've made to accompany my debut novel. And it's going to allow us an opportunity to look into my subconscious and a lot of themes which we'll basically explore over time because there's a lot going on. But basically, I'm going to show you how I made a transition from using samples into becoming more of a musician and using synthesizers to create a soundtrack. You're hearing some of it here now. This is the Caterpillar Club intro, and it represents the dive into my subconscious. Okay, so what are we going to talk about? Because there's no samples anymore. Well, there are samples. I'm going to show you how I used samples as what I call templating to create the origin vibes of things. And the first track we're going to look at, as you should do, is chapter 1. So let's read on the inner sleeve of the album here. Chapter 1. It's 9:45 on a Saturday night, and Simon is lifting his record boxes from the boot of a taxi onto the cold, oily tarmac of Portobello Road. Excuse me. So, opening scene of chapter 1, which is set in the Alitheius Club. And there's a Dead Man's Record collection in there. And it's an exploration of a type of DJing that goes on in West London. And basically, the track that accompanies this chapter is called The End of the Night. And I started off, would you believe, with Love Plus One by Haircut 100 as a template for this. And it's kind of crazy, you think, eh? But I love Love Plus One by Haircut 100 for lots of different reasons. First, it's a great track. It's got good tempo. Okay, so let's have a little listen to that. Okay, what attracted me to it was the marimbas and then also that guitar, because there's a function inside of Logic Pro and lots of other softwares where you can have the audio interpreted by MIDI. So basically it gives you an idea of what's going on notes wise. So I thought I'd run that on that, but it didn't work. So then I went against my new rules and got a Japanese album and sampled that. So we're going to go through all the demos. There was about 20. I've taken the ones that were the key changes, and this became a weird Japanese track for a couple of months. Sat on it. It's very dark and strange, but got a vibe. But the tempo is all that remains from Haircut 100. I love it, but it's not right for this project, okay? Couldn't really finish it. And also remember, we're not supposed to be using samples here. It's got to be all instrumental. Okay, so next, I took a read of those notes from the Japanese players. That became... Okay, I actually love that. I don't want to listen to it because I couldn't resolve it. I wasn't musically able to make that into a full thing. Then it became... Okay, you're seeing about a year's worth of work here, just on and off, going back into it and saying, okay, how can I make this work? Okay, So it's getting closer and closer to, you know, the novel that I'm doing finishing. So I'm starting to bring the music back in to the chapters and saying which chapter fits which beat, which music, okay? And this is what we ended up with, okay? And what I want you to sort of imagine that I'm doing here is that I've done two versions of the album. One is a reader's version, which is completely ambient, and that's meant so that you can read the book with it in the background, because rhythm, particularly, you know, strong rhythm in drums and what have you, breaks up reading patterns. Also, you can't write when you're listening to music, I think and believe. So I've made a reader's version, but this is the beat version, which has got the echoes of the main character, Simon Radcliffe's sort of history in playing music and being a producer, and basically his star is fading, and so there's a melancholy in this, okay, and that's what we're trying to capture here. And I'll give you a little blast of chapter 1. Okay, we'll get into sections of that later because we're going to talk about palettes when you're making music, okay? I decided to use a synthesizer palette for this because, as I told you before, no samples. So I've chosen to use some interesting things, an Omnisphere, a Diva synth. I mean, I've got a whole load of stuff that I built up, right? But one of the keyboards that was important was a DX7, which is Yamaha's breakthrough keyboard of the 80s, which basically was used on What's Love Got to Do With It, The Sweetest Taboo by Sade. And I chose it for that reason, right? It triggered something in me emotionally as regards memory. And time is a big theme in this novel. So basically, aspects of the palette are supposed to be triggers of certain eras of music and the journey that we all go through in life. Okay, so let's have a little listen to the reader's version. Okay, so you can get a little look at what I'm talking about here. I slowed it down, I took all the drums out. I suppose there's a bit of Brian Eno influentially going on here. Okay, so let's get into the track itself and break it down. When I'm going to be playing you these tracks like this off my computer, they're not mastered. I'm going to use that opportunity to show you some aspects of mastering, at home mastering anyway, because I want to also explain a little bit of the production process. This album was mastered by Sean Joseph at Optimum Mastering in Bristol, and he did a brilliant job. So what you're hearing from now on is my attempt at mastering, which is nowhere near the right approach, but it'll give you an idea of how music gets lifted by that process. Because I wanted this stage, as well as talking about writing words, also to show you the insides of how music is made. Just because some of you may do it, and also it's interesting, you know, to get into the DNA of how and why and what techniques we use when we're making things. Okay, so going back to that DX7, we can now give me an opportunity to play some other music. So basically, the beginning of What's Love Got to Do With It, Tina Turner, the flute sound is a DX7. Okay, don't need to hear any more of that. I'm just showing you its heritage, because in the 80s, literally 60% of all pop hits had a DX7 in them. Okay, Sweetest Taboo. This is the sound that I used, actually, I think, by Sade. I'm not using it because it's a particularly nice sound. I'm using it because of what it emotes, okay? Where it sits in the palette. This palette thing is important to reference when you're talking about making music, okay? So, okay, let me just kill all of that off. Now we're going to go, where are we? Okay, Diva. That's running me, nice little tickle along there. Pads. I love pads. I used presets on the majority of this. I twist things a little bit. I'm trying to use the chords to find an emotion that are going to represent the words. And here's the DX7. No, it's not. Here's the DX7. Okay, so I'm sort of referencing house music there as well, yeah, and almost reggae, you could say. So I'm trying to create a new. It's not meant for the dance floor. It's meant to echo the dance floor. This is time moving on. This is looking back to an era. Okay. The book is set in the present, by the way. So this is all to do with the main character's journey. Okay. It takes ages to write music that's instrumental, okay? Because you've got to build all of the sections up. What sounds simple sometimes takes a year to find, okay? B section here where the DX7 comes in. And I've got a bass line that I wanted to sort of reference mid-90s drum and bass. And this woman's voice goes throughout the soundtrack as an echo of the past, okay? Because of what's happening in the book. We're talking about time. Okay, so on the inner sleeves here, this is moving forward over the next 12 weeks. I've got all the equipment that I used: Universal Audio, Arturia, Contact 5, Silent, Diva, hand claps, samples from Mars, all the stuff I used, and then a bit of words. So we've got a bit of a focus about how we're going to do this. This is the first one. It's chapter 1, The End of the Night. As the weeks go on, we'll be able to explore deeper into what this book is about and also how the soundtrack reflects that. It's welcome to the Caterpillar Club, chapter 1. Thank you for watching.